there's a lot of modalities to training, but if the only one that does it for you, if the only one that provides you with enjoyment and, more importantly, fulfillment is, say, Randuri, if that's all you've got, it's finite. I'm here to tell you.
Right.
I'm not guessing. I'm here to tell you that, yeah, it's finite. And if the only kind of value you're able to derive from your experience in the dojo is through some sort of sparring, some sort of kumite or randori, contest training that's opposed and somewhat competitive or extremely competitive, that has an expiration date. That has an expiration date. I believe that has an expiration date. And if it doesn't, it's because someone's left early. But if we're going to live into our 80s or 90s, we got to pick some other ways to experience the euphoria of training that doesn't necessitate contest. I believe that. Mm-hmm. That's what I believe. And that's, so, wow, it's far reaching. Well, it's really not. It's not. Like, there's a lot of kata. There's a lot of kata. Jiu-jitsu has tremendous amount of kata. There's lots of drills to be done. And again, if this myth that people expect to be physically, their physical expression of their randuri or their kumite is going to be superior to what it was when they were in their absolute physical prime, I think it's naive. What's your thought?
I don't think it's superior, but I do think, like, I can find progress.
No doubt.
I can, and those are the things that I
treasure. Yes.
Like, I did something differently. I exercised some principle.
Sure. Well, you also treasured it because it's rare. It's rare. It's rare. It's finite. It's rare. Like, look, clock and the calendar, man. They move in one direction, and so we treasure that progress, but there's other progress. There's other things that we can get better at. We can get better at walking. We can get better at kneeling. We can get better at sitting down and standing up. I always think, like, I find it, the way we take Ukemi for granted in the beginning of our training,
buddy,
and kind of look,
it's maybe the most important lesson in the practice.
Well, it's so diagnostic as well as developmental, because let's see you do it now.
Well, just for those who don't know what Ukemi is, it's the art of falling.
Yeah, all the tumbling skills, all the body awareness skills, Tai Subaki, those, first of all, the skills are invaluable. It's a good diagnostic measure of kind of where you're at on the timeline. See, I've always maintained, and I think you'd agree, that one of the things about Randuri and Kumite is it affords us an opportunity, by its very nature, to hide our weaknesses. The other guy's trying to expose them, but we're trying to.
Exactly why I fought.
Sure.
It's exactly why.
Sure.
Because Kata exposed my weaknesses that I ran from.
Sure. Yeah.
It's exactly spot on.
Yeah. So again, I think a Kata practice, and it doesn't need to be elaborate. It doesn't need to be elaborate. And you say, well, like, at what extreme should an older practitioner expect to? I'm loath to use the word perform. I don't perform kata. I practice kata.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I don't perform it. I've practiced it publicly, but the best public practice I've ever provided is where I'm legitimately trying to get better at it, where I'm trying to improve. In other words, there's a difference between a demonstration and a developmental process. Someone was, I was it was my father-in-law's birthday today. Celebrating his birthday, and I said I have a podcast, and I'm going to be leaving early, and he was asking me about your podcast, and I was trying to explain to him how it is and what it is, and he said, "Why do you like doing it?" I said, "Because it holds me to a high standard. Because we don't rehearse. We've been preparing for this our entire lives,
That's right.
but I am trying to sharpen my saw. This is not performative. There's not like a room with a mirror and makeup, and we did take one, take two, and how do my teeth look? You know, but we are on the spot, and there are people who are listening to this right now. And again, I'm sorry if you're one of the people who, is disagreeing with it. In fact, I'm not sorry. I'm glad you're disagreeing. At least you're using your brain. But there are other people who listen to this who are our colleagues, our peers, our juniors and our seniors. And we're here to provide value. We're here to not demonstrate what we know, but we're sharpening our saw live as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
It's a developmental process. Like if we don't walk out of here today having grown, we're not going to want to do this again. I know I'm not.
I was saying the exact same thing to Walter when we came in.
Mm-hmm.
That I want to be perfecting this
yes,
art form, this practice.
Yeah.
And I had confessed to him that, like, I wonder if I'm full of shit about it. Like, I don't listen to all other podcasts. Like, I'm not perfecting my craft by looking at others. And Walt said something really nice to me. He's like, you're independent, you're unique. Like, you don't need to exactly know what everybody else is doing to do something great.
Well, you spent a lifetime doing that. I mean, I know you're not doing I'm not disagreeing with you. I know that, we're not like checking out everybody else's podcast to, figure out the algorithm, or I don't even know what that word, I don't know.
Right.
I say that word a lot. I don't even know what it means. but anyway, but we've spent our entire lives as practitioners. So, here we are sharing.
Man, I said, this is parallel to this conversation with Walt too about art. I said, like, I practice martial arts and I do the same thing with every other practice in my life. It is exactly the same day in, day out, the same mindset, the same.
Yes.
It's just right there. You're right there on it.
Yes.
We have been practicing our whole lives.
Yeah. So then we go back to, like, what can a senior practitioner who's not able to do what they, were once able to do is, I think the first thing is come to an awareness that they now know things that they once did not know.
Right.
So while right now they cannot do things they were once able to do, they now know things they were once incapable of knowing. You go, I wish I knew then what I know now.
You couldn't.
Yeah, you absolutely couldn't. And it's a good thing. It's a real good thing. Like we've joked about this. I had a particularly attractive ceramics teacher when I was in the 9th grade. Like, it's a good thing that I didn't know now what I know then. We'd have both gotten ourselves into trouble. So there's a reason. I think there's a reason that life goes the way the way it goes. I think it's which again is that's why I think we all find it so frustrating that we send the 17, 18, and 19 year olds off
to war.
Yeah. And I'd like to believe that there's certainly a logic to it, but there's something very diabolical about that. Like, I'll tell you right now, the me right now, it'd have to be a very compelling reason to send the 17-year-old me off to war. Me right now.
I was having this exact thought 2 days ago about, like, what would I do to go off to war now?
Yeah, there are some things.
There are some things.
Yeah.
Though I was not the 17-year-old me was not, I would never have done it.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
I-
Right. So that. All right, good point. So
because
but the you now, and I don't want to reveal your age, right? But the me now at my age, there are some things that are worth fighting for, worth dying for, worth killing for. There are. There just are. As terrible as that sounds,
I
right?
know,
Okay.
man.
Okay.
As I'm saying,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we weren't capable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, it's
Emotionally,
sure.
intellectually,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
philosophically.
So again,
Physically,
yeah.
a 17-year-old is capable of killing
Yeah.
somebody, right?
Yeah.
But or going off to war.
So here would be this is like, I think, a good lesson for somebody. A good lesson for somebody is, and particularly people who don't have children of their own. If you don't have children, right? You say, well, what would I want, the kind of training I'd want to provide me with right now, if you as an instructor were able to train Gene Dunn as a student when Gene Dunn was somewhere between 18 and 25, or what do you think is physical prime? When were you in the physical prime of your life? 25 to 30? When do you think you were at your animal best? Give me a window.
29.
Yeah. How would you train
still
you back
fast.
then?
I was still strong.
Yeah.
I was
but how would you
very physical.
knowing what you know now, how would you train you if you could train the you back then under the you right now with your, let's call it your wisdom? How would you approach it? How would you approach it? Would you approach it for the moment? Would you approach it for longevity? Would you approach it for both? Like, where would the quicksand be? Taking a look back, what would you not want?
I would have
you as a
forced
student to
my
experience?
student, the 29-year-old Gene Dunn, to face more of his fears. I would have put him in situations and stood by him and forced him to face that.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like, again, I am very reluctant. I'm careful not to do this. I'm careful not to look back with animosity toward the influences in my life. So let me preface what I have to say with that I'm not disappointed. I'm not looking back going, I wish they would have. But sometimes I wonder if my instructors knew how full of shit I was and let me get away with it. Because I was full of shit and they let me get away with it. So I often wonder to myself, like, because I was blessed to have trained with who I consider to be some very, very, very accomplished and intelligent teachers. Something leads me to believe they knew I was full of shit and they allowed it because they knew that the consequences of those lessons were coming. The future was coming for me, and eventually I would arrive at the necessary lesson that had to be learned. On the other hand, if I were able to train me back then,
Yeah.
if I right now could train
Yeah.
the full of shit 20-year-old,
Yeah.
hiding his weaknesses,
Yeah.
doing everything he possibly could to not reveal the inadequacies, deficiencies, and flaws,
Yeah.
and do all the things I possibly could to kind of work around them and not through them, I would try to get that kid to confront those things, similar to, I think, what you said. That's what I think you said. I think that my approach to training, and I think a lot of people's approach to training.
I'm thinking about it, and like, of course I was full of shit.
Yeah.
Though I recall not wanting to be full of shit. Like really having a sincere desire to learn how not to be.
Mm-hmm.
And what I remember was that, and you could be right, that my instructors saw it coming and knew that the lessons were more important for me in that, on that track than another track. But it's why I said I would stand behind or with the younger Gene Dunn.
Mm-hmm.
because there is like I think there that like when you know somebody like has kind of like your back in a way, like a sincere instructor, a real instructor like wants to see the best for somebody.
Yes.
I do agree, like sometimes let the baby have its bottle. That is true. Though I wonder to myself in your analogy and your in this question that you pose that if there's a sincere desire to rectify the full of shitness and it's not being fostered, that may be a tragedy.
Yeah. So
Maybe.
yep. I think, yeah. Well, my first teacher would say, it's my dad had 2 books on his nightstand, and Sun Tzu's Art of War and Musashi's Book of Five Rings. And those are books that he had, and he revered Asian culture, revered it because he spent some time in Okinawa in the 40s and like had a guilty conscience. And my opinion is he should not have had a guilty conscience. I looked at what he had to do or what he chose to do as, it was quite heroic. But I think he had a guilty conscience. And a lot of my decision to pursue the martial arts, particularly Chinese martial arts, because after his time in Okinawa, I guess the Marine Division to which he belonged liberated China. So the Japanese were no longer occupying Beijing and Tianjin, and that's where he spent his time. And so he would talk about Sun Tzu, and my first teacher would talk about Sun Tzu and this idea that all combat is based on deception. That's like my number one takeaway from the Art of War is that all combat is based on deception, but all training is based on truth. Combat is based on deception, but training approached appropriately is based on truth. There's no room in training for deception. Yeah, for example, like if you go to I think a reputable boxing gym, nobody's teaching you about how to feint and how to fake and how to though we're naturally good at being full of shit. What we're not really good at is doing 500 sit-ups and jumping rope for 9 rounds and, getting in there and only using your jab and your left hook for, et cetera. We're not good at the parts of the training that require absolute honesty and truth.
Right.
We'll figure out all the deception and the lies and the trickery.
Right.
Like we're all magicians. That comes naturally to us. What we're not really good at is the truth. So while all combat is based on deception, and Sun Tzu's this like legend, and I guess rightly so, but in a way it's kind of interesting. Like I don't find it that compelling.
Deception?
Yeah, I don't think it took mankind very long to figure that one out.
Mr. Miyazaki used to tell me, he said, "You're too honest, man. You're too straight. You can't be a great fighter. You're too honest.
Yeah,
You're too direct."
I don't again, I can't speak for Mr. Miyazaki, but I have a feeling that he was aware of the fact that
I was full of shit.
Well, that you were going to figure that other part out. Like he either felt like you weren't using enough of that when you fought.
Yeah. That's what he was saying.
Yeah, but he didn't have to teach you. He just had to motivate you to figure that out. You're going to figure that out. You don't have to be taught how to lie.
Yeah.
You don't have to be taught how to lie.
Certainly.
You don't have to be influenced how to lie. Like I have 3 kids, and I love them.
They know how to lie.
Really
they know
good
how to
at
lie.
it. Really good at it. Really good at it. Really, really good at it. Truth's a discipline.
Yeah.
Like lying is not a discipline. Lying is a default.
Maybe that's what Mr. Funakoshi is getting at.
Maybe.
That a lifetime of disciplined truth
look,
is important, or
yeah, if we're
the
gonna
viewpoint.
If we're gonna close, we would close with this: is Do you remember how difficult your training was when you first started? Remember how difficult? See, I do. I remember.
I certainly remember how challenging it
Yeah,
was.
I remember that it was the most difficult thing I ever did until now. because it is far more difficult now than it was then. Far more difficult now than it was then.
I was ill prepared for that first lesson.
Yeah, so was I.
Oh my gosh.
But in hindsight, like when I look back, partly because it's over. It's over now. Like it, things that are over, like after you've done them, like maybe they're not so difficult anymore because it's done. But back then I thought it was it was insurmountable. But like now here I am, and it's hard to warm up. It's hard to warm up. It's hard to warm up. Like the pain
But you
is
still
real.
do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love every single second of
Yeah.
it. And I value it and cherish it more now than I ever have. But again, like I didn't quite understand what the difficulty was going to be. So when we talk about a lifetime of practice, the challenges never end. The challenge. See, here's a good one. Is we've talked about this. Like anyone who's listened to more than one of these will remember. And your classmate, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but Professor Matt Serra was
My senior.
number in the order. There were five.
Matt.
There were 5 Deadly Venoms.
Matt. Nick.
Nikki.
Ricardo. He's American.
Yeah.
American born.
Yeah.
Danaher.
Sean.
No, wait. No.
The order
Ricardo's
I remember,
not in it.
Right.
It's
Ricardo was
Matt,
Nikki,
Nick,
Sean.
Danaher, Sean, me.
Sean wasn't before John?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. Maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't think so.
You're definitely number 5.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. So yeah. So when you go back and you look at how difficult, how daunting, how demanding your training was back then, like how let me ask you this question: do you remember the anvil upon which your non-quitting spirit was forged? What I mean by that is, in your early training, was there any obstacle, any hurdle that you felt was so insurmountable that you almost broke, that you almost threw in the towel? Was there ever anything that got you to the quitting point? And you decided not to quit, obviously, because you're still doing it. But do you remember anything? I can remember a few things. A few things stand out.
Are you talking about like when I first started, when I was 12? Or like in that period where...
Could be second time around.
Jiu-jitsu? I'm going to the Renzo Gracie Academy.
Could be there. Let's use the Renzo Gracie Academy experience. Was there anything where it's like, you know what, this is never
I'm never going back, or
I'm never going to get this.
Get jujitsu.
I might go back, but I'm never going to
get my black belt. Which?
Yeah, maybe that. Maybe I'm never going to get my black belt.
Oh, that was all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah. Now, when you look back, how?
But
not how.
There wasn't a time where I was going, I'm never going to jujitsu.
Okay. Good. Good. The love was that pure.
I cannot ever, never recall a time.
Sure. You didn't have enough discipline to quit.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah, you didn't have enough self-control to give up.
No fucking way.
Right. I get it.
Okay, so
black belt, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So now when you look back at that.
But may I just say, like, I don't think I've gotten jujitsu.
I know you haven't. I know you haven't. And I
don't understand it at all.
All right. So I'm gonna say something, and a lot of people are gonna I'm gonna get. Actually, I'm not.
You're not gonna get any hate mail, buddy. You're not that important. No, I'm just kidding.
It's the truth. It's true. I'm so sad for Master Hickson Gracie, and I'm so happy for him at the same time. I'm genuinely sad.
Because of the Parkinson?
Yeah, I'm sad for him, but I'm also happy for him. Because
he doesn't have to carry that weight.
Well, he does. He has to carry a different weight.
But it ain't that weight.
But he's facing a challenge that, first of all, he's facing one he can't win.
Huh.
He's going to lose. This one's going to get him. But I really believe, I'm happy for him that he gets to have an experience of unbelievably adversity with an awareness that it doesn't end well. And that I bet that gets him up early and keeps him up late. And I mean this compassionately. There's somebody listening to this right now who hasn't read enough books, or they're oxygen deprived. Like they're not going to be able to put this thought together in a way that they can appreciate my sentiment. But I mean it sincerely. You know, my dad was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's, and his sister my Aunt Lenny walks into my house, you know, like the family's coming to, you know, gather around, and when he was first diagnosed, to show their love and support. And, you know, my Aunt Lenny's his younger sister, and she says, you know, you're so lucky. This is this is a blessing. Yeah. And I wanted to hit her over the head with a chair, you know.
The kitchen chair.
Sure.
I'm right there with you.
Sure. You know, because I was too stupid to understand how sincerely she meant it and how deeply she loved her older brother. That this is a blessing, and it was a blessing. It's a blessing. My parents fell in love, perhaps, I like to say all over again, but I think for the first time. And, you know, everyone was able to say things, and he was able to say things knowing there was a finality right around the corner, like nothing was left unsaid. And there's just, I could go on and on about the blessing,
right,
and the challenges and the difficulties,
sure,
and the pain and the you know, the emotional crosses to bear. But I think those are blessings. So the older practitioner has that to look forward to. And I mean that sincerely. Yeah, there's something about if you've ever been injured, you know, there's this opportunity to come back not as good, but better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And when you're older, there's an opportunity to come back not necessarily better, but different. It's exciting.
And I think that's what I was telling Harris.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. So martial arts for life. The only time you can expect to stop learning is if you stop studying, if you stop training, you will benefit from the martial arts, guaranteed, for as long as you're willing to participate. And I don't just mean show up.
Right.
I mean participate.
Right.
I like to close with this. Like, for all the angry people who ridicule the participation trophy, it's not a presence trophy. It's a participation trophy. There's a difference. It's not just a show up trophy. It's a participation trophy. It means you got out there.
Yep.
You suited up. You put you put on your gi, you put on your belt, and you participate. As long as you do that, you'll benefit.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you for listening to the Gentle Art Podcast. Please share, rate, and review. And if you have any questions or you'd like to reach out, please contact us at the GentleArtPodcast@gmail.com, or contact us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or thegentleartpodcast.com.